Welcome to No Password Required. I'm your host, Jack Clabby, a cybersecurity attorney at Carlton Fields, PA, here in sunny Tampa, Florida. And with me, as always,
I am Kayley Melton, the Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Cognitive Security Institute and the Bob Ross of InfoSec.
So Kayley, we've just finished a great conversation with Trevor Hilligoss. Kayley, what stood out to you the most from that conversation?
Oh my gosh, it was such a fun conversation. I can't wait for people to hear the polygraph section. But I really enjoyed Trevor's use of metaphors and analogies. I particularly enjoyed his comparison of how the public generally overemphasizes the wrong parts of cybersecurity and threat actors and things like that. And he compared that to how we're deathly afraid of airplanes and airplane crashes, but we don't think about the far more dangerous job of driving to the airport itself. So,
yeah, and it's something that those in the cybersecurity industry, particularly in the high levels of the game, they want to talk about the hardest and newest and coolest stuff. But in reality, right, sophistication, as he describes it, doesn't equal success. He also shares with us one of the greatest lines we've heard recently. I'm going to preview it. Stay tuned for his reference to a self-licking ice cream cone. All right, so you've heard a little bit about Kayley and I have taken away from this discussion. Now let's hear what Trevor Hilligoss has to say.
Welcome to No Password Required, a podcast dedicated to showcasing the top personalities in the world of cybersecurity.
Welcome. Our guest is Trevor Hilligoss. Trevor, welcome to No Password Required.
Hey, thanks, Jack. It's great to be here.
All right, so we're going to get into cybersecurity, but just before that, there's one thing I want to ask. What is the most unexpected place your career has taken you?
Jeez, starting off strong. Man, so many. I guess that what comes to mind, I've been to the White House, which was an honor several times. I've been to the Philippine Presidential Palace, which was unexpected. Been to North Korea. That was a bit of a wild ride. Probably some others that I shouldn't mention on a national podcast, but let's start with those three.
It's funny because you sometimes think of like when you hear about another country having a presidential palace, you're like, that's weird. They have a presidential palace. But then you remember we literally have a mansion that our president lives in. That's just in the middle of our capital. Yeah. Well,
the Philippines is pretty similar. It's not a similar building by any means, but it's very much a mansion, and it's pretty close to the center of Manila. So, and it's white too. There's a lot of parallels there. Korea is a little different. Korea, I believe they have a blue house. So not to turn this into like, let's talk about presidential palaces for an hour, but there's some interesting things there.
So following your time in the Army Criminal Investigation Division, the CID, you reached a fork in your career road. Can you tell us about that fork and that life-changing decision that you made?
Yeah. So Army CID was a fantastic experience. For those that aren't familiar, Army Criminal Investigation Division is kind of, I would describe it as like the FBI for the Army, right? So it's a lot of the same cases that the FBI investigates. CID investigates oftentimes with the FBI, just, having some kind of nexus to the U.S. Army there. So it gave me a great, a great ability to kind of have exposure to a lot of different things. And I worked a lot of fantastic cases. Towards the end of my time as a special agent with the Army, I was actually attached to an FBI cyber task force. So I got to kind of see the other side of that as well, which was absolutely amazing. Got to work with some amazing people. But, I realized that for a number of reasons, I needed to find something else to do with my life. And I definitely do not regret leaving government service. I think, I value my time there, and there's still some fantastic people doing amazing things every single day for not just the US, but, the world, quite honestly. And I'm incredibly thankful that those people are there and doing that. And I'd like to think that I'm able to assist, if only at a distance and on the other side of the fence.
So both crime scene investigation and digital forensics play a pretty important role in modern law enforcement, I would say. What drew you to each specifically, and how do they show up in your work?
So about 6 months, so when I became a special agent, and everybody, well, for CID, I think this is the case in most federal agencies, you have basically a period of probationary time where you kind of learn the ropes, right? Typically, you're assigned to a more senior agent, and you work, in my case, I worked what we called general crimes. So basically anything that walked in the front door, largely people crimes, everything from, the unfortunate homicides to somebody stealing a car. It'd have to be a pretty nice car for it to be a felony level, but you can get there. So about 6 months into that, I remember I had a conversation with my special agent in charge at the time, and she kind of sat me down and said, look, there's basically two paths that I see for you. You could stay on the forensic side and become a forensic specialist, and your life would be working murder scenes, or you could go into digital forensics. And I grew up around computers. My dad was an electrical engineer. I grew up soldering next to him, and had written a little bit of code. I would not have considered myself anything close to an engineer at that point, but it was not too foreign to me. So, and I also did not look forward to spending my life responding to the worst days in other people's lives, or the end of other people's lives in some cases. So I took her up on the digital forensic option, went through the training. It's distinctly different than what I do now, right? Digital forensics largely is, oftentimes it's called dead box forensics. So, you're working on something that was seized, a cell phone, a computer, or a hard drive, whatever. It's offline, right?
Gotcha.
And it's been offline, has to remain offline for a number of reasons. That's really different from working malware cases, or working cases into advanced persistent threats, as I did in my past life. But there's definitely a lot of things that translate, right? Like good evidence handling practices, maintaining a chain of custody, making sure that you're documenting everything that you do, making sure that you're consulting with the right people to make sure that you're not going to do something wrong or illegal or unethical. All of those things are super translative, and I think have really informed me quite well, even though I'm not necessarily, last time I did a forensic examination of a computer was, I don't know, probably 2016, 2017. It's been a while. Now I guess maybe like 2018. I'll give myself the benefit of the doubt there, but it's been a while, right? But I definitely, a lot of those same skills and kind of techniques that I learned from that phase of my life, I use it each and every day.
Yep.
That's awesome. So speaking of your current day-to-day, can you walk us through a typical day in your role? I know you oversee a lot of responsibilities at SpyCloud.
Yeah, it's a lot of meetings. I think it's one thing I've learned. That the more you get into management, it's really just more meetings. Maybe that's
Absolutely.
Just 'cause I'm a remote worker, but no, it's a lot of fun. I've got SpyCloud Labs does a lot of stuff. I mean, we do malware analysis, we do direct, interactions with threat actors where we're directly collecting data that has been stolen from, victims around the world and making sure that we can get that to those victims before it can be used by criminals. Yeah. We also have an engineering capability, right? So we're taking part in, the R&D process, which is totally different, but, no less cool. Yeah. So I don't know that there's really a standard day for me. Which is, I think I like that. I think that's good. Yeah. Right. It's maybe that would scare some people, but I have horrible ADHD. And so context switching is my love language. And so getting something new a new Slack message every five minutes, it's completely different from the last one that I got, is really cool. And it, stays interesting. I keep learning new things, which is really neat. And I, wherever I can be helpful, even if that means shutting up, because, the best managers, sometimes the best thing you can do is just shut up and let your people work.
Yeah.
How can I help? And then be quiet, right? It's very, very hard to learn.
When you get hit with the first RTFM, that's when you learn real quick. Like, okay, maybe I should just sit down and read the documentation. Stop bugging
Exactly.
So, Trevor, a lot of the work of Cyber Florida and some of the work of our audience too are folks who were in the military and then transitioned to a cyber career, or folks who do hiring for cybersecurity companies and often look at folks with military experience. How does your military experience inform your approach to cybersecurity at SpyCloud?
A lot. I am a huge, I had kind of a non-traditional journey to military service. I saw it as kind of a way to figure out what I needed to do with my life after college. And it's such a good learning experience. I think about like the kind of guy that I was when I was 18, right? I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Right? I didn't know what I wanted to be. I could barely get my shoes tied in the morning. And the military is full of a bunch of 18-year-olds that are just like you, right? And that are learning and seeing these crazy new places all around the world, especially joining, when America was at war. It's a unique experience. So I think a lot of that, I would say it's probably taught me more about leadership than cybersecurity specifically, mostly because I didn't really do a lot of cybersecurity when I joined the Army. I joined to be a forward observer. Doing targeting of artillery mortars and aviation, not super close to cybersecurity, probably as far away as you can get. But certainly, learning how to be a leader, learning how to take care of people, and really, regardless of what career field you're in, that should be your first. If you're a leader, that is your first and last responsibility above all else, is taking care of your people. So that kind of experience being in that military mindset, not that I'm a drill sergeant by any means, I was a horrible NCO, but taking care of people, making sure that you put the mission first. And oftentimes the mission is the people, right? In most cases it is, I would argue, is definitely really useful in my current field.
Trevor, I know you lead your team based on the General Patton quote that don't tell people how to do things, tell them what to do, and then let them surprise you with their results. How does that align with your kind of leadership philosophy?
Yeah, to tell them, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's something along the lines of tell them what needs to get done and be impressed at how they go about it. Right.
Oh, great.
That is like my anchor. We've all had micromanagers, right? Every single one of us has had a boss that's constantly in your business and is, what's the status? What's going on? I didn't get an email from you this morning. Are you at work? Like that is the most unhelpful thing that you can do. Period. Like aside from just like not showing up to work. In fact, not showing up to work might be better in those cases. So, I have been amazed at even the most junior of researchers coming up with like incredibly novel ways to solve problems. And if I was the kind of guy that would just like dictate from on high, this is how you're going to do it. Are we going to reach the desired end state? Probably, right? We'll probably get there, but nobody's going to be happy about it. I'm not going to be happy, right? Because I'm spending all my time keeping track of you. You're not going to be happy because you've got some dude on your shoulder that's yelling at you every 10 seconds. And we're probably going to miss something because there's ideas that every single person in an organization has, regardless of their seniority or experience level, that could be amazing. And if you're not allowing them to make those decisions and make those mistakes too, right? Those things are hand in hand. You're missing out on all of that innovation. So like what I would say to leaders from that quote's perspective is like, empower your people to fail. Let them fail safely, pick them up when they fail, and then learn from that experience, right? If you are so risk averse as to just control every minute detail of every project, you are going to miss so much greatness that your people can give you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. Speaking of quotes, I hear you have a sticker on your laptop that says something like, you can hack your way into a war, but you have to shoot your way out. So in the cybersecurity world, would you say that your role specifically is more about fighting active threats or about fortifying defenses before that happens?
Yeah, credit to where credit is due. I believe that one came from that's a John Holquist from CyberWarCon. Fantastic sticker. One of my favorites. I got a whole bunch on the back of my laptop. I think it's both. I think one of the things that really drew me to cybersecurity from law enforcement, especially, law enforcement is often reactive, and you can do your best job, but realize that every time you're responding to a scene, something has already happened, right? There is already a victim. There's nothing that you can do, at least as, an investigative. Obviously, there are law enforcement that can be deterrent, but in my, I was not on patrol. I responded to things that had already happened. So that's really frustrating. That's hard to do day in and day out. Cybersecurity, we have this unique ability to influence things before they happen. Yeah. We can take a defensive posture. We can make life harder for the bad guys. We can go offensive. It's not just the government that can do offensive things. The government can do a lot more creative offensive things. But private sector has a lot of data and a lot of ability to work together to counter the adversary. And if we do that and we do it well, then that victim never becomes a victim, right? Yeah. We can stop that identity theft. We can stop that ransomware attack. And to me, that is immensely more satisfying than showing up and having to kind of pick up the pieces.
Yeah, it makes sense. Hopping back to how your leadership style and the urge to micromanage, I understand that you're one of the unicorn leaders who can actually still code. So how does that skill influence how you manage your teams?
Yeah, well, I hope it's not unicorn. I think one of the things that really struck me as odd when I came into the private sector is from, being a special agent, having supervisory special agents above me. Like when I was in cyber, my supervisory special agent, my SSA, was also in cyber, right? They were a case agent before they were a supervisor. And obviously they weren't read up on like all of the techniques that, we needed to do on a daily basis, but they had been a cyber agent. They knew what working a cyber case looked like. And so they could be an advisor, they could be a mentor and provide, technical suggestions that could be very useful in working a case. The weird thing for me is the private sector doesn't seem to have gotten that message. There's a lot of non-technical leaders of technical people. Mm-hmm. And I know I've heard the arguments for why. I get it. It doesn't make sense to me. You don't need to be the most technical person in the room. You don't need to be the best coder on your team. In fact, you shouldn't be the best coder on your team if you're a leader. I'm certainly not. But when I'm in these meetings and I'm hearing engineers talk about the challenges that they're facing, if I don't even understand the core concepts of those problems, I am a detriment to my team. On one hand, I'm either stopping development to ask questions that are stupid and I should already know the answer to. On the other hand, I'm unable to give advice. I can't be that mentor because I don't understand the core problem. So what I would say is you don't have to be a developer. I mean, I love writing code. I love being a developer. I think I'll always be that person because I just enjoy doing it. But that's not a requirement. Mm-hmm. Be competent enough so that nobody has to explain concepts to you. Like that, to me, that is the bar. If you're a technical leader, that's what you should strive to be. And if you're not meeting that, YouTube exists. Go watch some coding videos because it's amazing how much you can learn.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have the same sort of, I've been a leader of devs for years, and although they've always loved to tease me about my own coding skills, I was at least a programmer. I do understand the concepts.
Yeah, the code's going to look ugly. There's not going to be doc strings. I can guarantee you that. But if there is, I use ChatGPT. But hey, you don't have to explain to me that if else statement you're talking about, right? I can
exactly. Read it. Yeah. That's such a huge benefit for technical teams. That's one of my own pet peeves, honestly. All
right. So sometimes, Trevor, you do get into it with folks on LinkedIn, and you recently had a little bit of a back and forth with a friend about APTs. Can you describe that a little bit for us?
Yeah. No, I love. Well, I have a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn and social media writ large. But no, that was fun. So that was a friend of mine, another leader in CTI. I don't remember exactly what the post was about, but I talk a lot about I've worked APT cases before. Now I do a lot of cybercriminal stuff. I did a lot of cybercriminal stuff when I was a special agent. It used to be that there was this really hard line between the two, and you could really equate the success to sophistication, right? Those were essentially exchangeable words. How sophisticated an actor was generally could be, highly correlated with how successful they were. I've been making the argument for a couple of years now that that's just wrong. Maybe it was right at one time, but these days, with how commodified, the ecosystem has become and how basically everything is sold as a service now, sophistication really does not matter. At least, well, especially for the cyber criminals, but I would argue even for a lot of the APTs, a lot of the stuff they're doing is very basic, excepting the 0 days that we see every once in a while. A lot of the stuff they're doing is very basic, hack tricks type stuff, right? So that was the argument that we got into was kind of related to that. I think I said something along the lines of, unless you work for a 3-letter agency, you probably should worry a lot more about the dude sitting in a basement in Severodonetsk than the guy that's in a government building in Moscow or St. Petersburg, right?
That's it. It's always unpatched. It's always unpatched Windows 95 in the basement. That's might as well prepare for that. You don't have to worry about the super highly sophisticated stuff.
Yeah. I would add to that. It's either DNS, it's that unpatched Windows 95 server, or it's some dude that didn't turn on MFA for the past 20 years and has used the same credential for the same amount of time. Right?
We have MFA for everyone. Yeah, we have MFA for everyone, but our C-suite didn't want to turn it on.
Right.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I've heard just the craziest stories about, he has a flip phone, so he can't do MFA. Well, give the dude a YubiKey. Come on, man. But yeah, so that was the exchange. It was basically look, I get that we've built an entire self-licking ice cream cone of an ecosystem around, APTs and talking about APTs. And that's cool. I like the word salad as much as anybody else. But let's open the aperture a little bit and remember that it's usually not the 0D that we need to worry about. It is that, as you mentioned, Windows 95 server that was plugged in 30 years ago and has not been touched since.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about cyber criminals, and why do you think that myth persists?
Just what I said. It's sophistication. It's and I blame Hollywood for this. But it's not just Hollywood. It's also, we the cybersecurity community are part of the problem. I think we tend to focus on the most sophisticated. It's like the plane crash dilemma, right? We all know that planes are incredibly safe. That, you're much more likely to get into a car accident on your way to the airport than you are to have any issue while in the actual plane. Yeah. But because, horrific events like what we saw in DCA a couple months ago happen and they get so much news coverage, it inflates our perception of the problem, right? Yeah. The same thing is true, I would say, with actor sophistication. We hyper fixate on these massive, cyber events that are very, very rare and use 0 days. And it's this complicated, infection vector that takes multiple blog posts to explain. But that's the airplane, right? Like that is such a rare event in the grand scheme of things. You have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of intrusions every single day using things like off-the-shelf info stealers or credential stuffing attack or an unpatched vulnerability that somebody scans Shodan for, right? Like all of these things are far, far, far more common to actually impact you as an individual than some, 2-digit designated APT that shows up on, the nightly news. So that is what I would really focus on personally. It's what I do focus on. So I think that's the bear of the problem. It's great that we have folks to focus on the other side of that. The APTs definitely do need some love too, but I really do wish people would get a little bit farther away from Hollywood and realize that not every criminal is a criminal mastermind.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I love that analogy as well. It strikes me that you're very charismatic and well-spoken, and I'm assuming some of that comes from being a regular on the cybersecurity talk circuit. So I'm curious what your most memorable post-presentation interaction might have been through that talk circuit time.
Most memorable. So a little bit after the start, so 2022, little bit after the war in Ukraine kicked off, I was in Europe giving a talk on a specific Russian threat actor, cybercriminal threat actor that was highly targeting Ukraine. And I had the suspicion, it was not confirmed, but that there was some sharing going on with the Russian government. Shocker, right? Super out on a limb on that one. Anyway, after the talk, a guy came up to me that had listened to the talk, and turned out he was, and I don't remember the exact agency, but he was essentially the head of like the Ukrainian government network security agency or whatever that agency was. I don't remember exactly, but he was obviously very, very interested in what I had to say. And we talked, had a couple adult beverages together. And then I sent him everything that we had, which was, a lot of basically this group was using stolen credentials through keyloggers and info stealers to gain initial access. And then, they would deploy additional tooling inside to move laterally and escalate privileges and do all the nasty stuff, doing a lot of wipers and low-level data theft, that kind of stuff. Anyway, we passed all that information over that they were using to target. And I heard through the grapevine, weeks or a couple months later, that they were able to use that data to reset a bunch of credentials and lock down a bunch of accounts. Awesome. And didn't see any more. Well, from our vantage point, at least, I'm sure other people have a much better view. Those that say work by a river, but we didn't see any more targeting using that those TTPs after we passed that over. So That was pretty cool. To be at least tangentially involved in some righteous action by the Ukrainians.
That's so cool.
That's awesome, Trevor. All right. Well, we're going to take a short break now. And when we return, Trevor's going to go through our lifestyle polygraph. So stay with us.
You're listening to the No Password Required podcast. We cover cybersecurity and a lot of other stuff.
Welcome back. As many of you know, the Lifestyle Polygraph is a test used by the federal government to determine if a person is worthy of learning some of our nation's most important secrets. Here, though, we use this technique for slightly lower stakes to determine whether our guest can join our fantasy cybersecurity squad. Trevor, are you ready for our Lifestyle Polygraph?
I'm very glad you prefaced that with that. This is not the same lifestyle polygraph as the government.
I'm sure you've experienced. Yes.
Yep, I'm ready. Hit me.
All right, great. First question. It's a two-part question. If you had a board meeting walk-up song, what would it be? And second part, which song would you judge most harshly if one of your coworkers had it for their walk-up song?
Jeez. Oh, that's good. So walk-up song, I don't have to think too hard on this because we actually do. In my company, we have like every few quarters we'll have like a company-wide thing, and all the executives have a walk-up song. So
no way.
Mine is "Can't Stop" by Red Hot Chili Peppers. As a West Coast boy, it's kind of a natural pick.
That's great.
What I would judge most, I like to think I wouldn't judge anything,
sure,
you do you.
Sure.
With a slight asterisk next to that, which would be if you pick something like lately, I have a young girl, my daughter, who loves the song Pink Pony Girl, which I'm no shade, right? It's a good song. But holy crap, does that stick with you? That is like the earworm of all earworms. So I would just say like, the only thing I would judge you for is if you pick one of those songs that is going to stick with me for the next week. That you're getting judged.
Trevor, I have 2 daughters, and they were practicing piano and voice to Pink Pony Club for weeks. Oh
my God!
I know every beat unintentionally, and I agree it's a great song. And I think she performed it during the Grammys, and I was like, wow, this is. That's when I realized I know every single part of the song. I know it as well as you possibly could.
I'm ashamed to admit that I'm right there with you. Yep.
I'm with you. Wait, with the Los Angeles focus, though, do a lot of people pick like how is hair metal faring? Do people pick like early '90s Los Angeles hair metal for any of their walk-up songs, or?
Yeah, we got some late '80s, early '90s, hair metal bands that come up. We're Austin based, so there's some country music that I kind of have to grin and bear. Nothing against country music, just not my jam. Yep. It's an interesting swath of different songs that appear in close concert.
I have a theory that like if you ask where did all the guitar forward pop rock kind of go, and I think they all went to country music. Like if you listen to country music today, it all sounds like Eric Church would have been in the late '90s, early 2000s would have just been a pop.
Oh
anyway,
controversial. You take the Alabama drawl away, and it's just pop punk, right? Like that's all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying that.
Listen, I live in Nashville. I'm allowed to make this estimation.
There we go. You're the judge.
All right. Number 2. Can you tell us about how you build your favorite West meets East Coast breakfast?
Yes. Oh man, I'm gonna get ribbed quite a bit for this segment. I have what my wife would call an unhealthy obsession with New York style bagels. To the extent that I actually every 2 weeks I have a dozen New York City bagels overnighted to me.
That's awesome.
Where I live in Northern Virginia. So that's the east part. The west part.
That's awesome.
Some of you have probably seen this in your local grocery store because it's spread quite a bit over the past probably 2 decades. But Tillamook Creamery makes some of the greatest, best dairy products. I'll swear by it. Tillamook's a town in Oregon, near where I grew up. And I swear by their jalapeno cream cheese spread. And then lately I've been modifying that slightly. Still jalapeno cream cheese spread. But if you're familiar with Migas tacos, the filling, so scrambled eggs and corn chips, fried in chili oil. Put that on top of your bagel with jalapeno cream cheese. And unless you don't like spice, I guarantee you'll like it.
Wow, that's a great recommendation. Is that a weekday thing you would do, or is that weekends only kind of a setup, Trevor?
Oh, that's weekends only. Yeah.
Okay.
No, weekdays, whatever I can put in my body, usually coffee. Well, always coffee, sometimes more than coffee.
I'm going to look for that Tillamook spread because we have Tillamook cheese and ice cream now in Florida at Publix, and it is awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. Little taste of Oregon.
Awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited to hunt that down. I'm going to check that out and try this one. Yeah, you learn a lot about folks about their breakfasts, right? It really is something. But there are days sometimes where I don't eat until dinner, and it's just horrible, right? I need to always remind myself, sit down and eat something, for heaven's sake. Come on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. It's like the Snickers commercial.
Yeah, exactly.
Couldn't be a truer representation of how a day often goes for me.
Yeah. All right. Number 3. Which 3 people that we have heard of would you choose if you were building the ultimate escape room team?
All right. So I got to confess, I did think about this one beforehand, because if you had asked me this directly on the spot, I would have a 0 answer for you. But here's what I came up with. So I would get Jack Sparrow, specifically because, well, he's a great rum drinker and I'm a big fan of rum. So that's tertiary. So specifically because a crazy plan that always works out, right? That's your planner.
Yeah.
I would get Tony Hawk, number 1, because I was a child of the 90s and pro skater, come on. But also because he does all of his own tricks and they're fantastic. So that's the stuntman. And then number 3 would be Neil deGrasse Tyson. Number 1, because he's quite smart, brilliant even, but more importantly, he is so good at explaining incredibly complex scientific concepts in a way that everybody can understand. And I think having a scientific communicator that is brilliant and that can also speak in a way that other people can listen would be a fantastic benefit to said escape room.
That's a really interesting team to throw together. I like that.
You would have Jack Sparrow and Neil deGrasse Tyson solve it, and then you just have Tony Hawk doing 900s like off to the side, just like to hang out with.
Yeah, he's not really all that critical. I just really want to meet the guy, honestly.
Just use it as a chance to get some time with him. It's really pretty awesome. I think at one point he had a LinkedIn account too. At some point someone might have shown it to me and it was just like amazing. Entrepreneur, stuntsman, or something like that. Just something really ridiculous.
I saw him walking through the Austin airport years ago, and it was like straight out of a meme. He had his skateboard in his hand. I was far too much of a chicken to go up and say hi to him, but it was just definitely the perfect expression of peak Tony Hawk.
I found myself watching an hour-long play YouTube video with my son, who's 13, of Tony Hawk Pro Skater on I think the PS2. And that was quite the throwback. But I was like, yeah, 100%. We're just going to sit down and watch this whole thing for an hour. It was just better than any movie I've seen in the last 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
So he's also responsible for that, in addition to all the other cool cultural things he did. So got a lot of people into video games.
It's true. Okay, number 4, speaking of video games, what is your favorite nerd culture thing?
Oh, that's an easy one. It's all over my background. I love Star Wars. I've loved Star Wars for my entire life. I remember I had a Jar Jar Binks to-go cup back when early 2000s, when all of the fast food establishments were giving out Star Wars merch. I still have that, actually.
Wow,
that's awesome.
So I'm also pleased to say that I've gotten my entire family, including my kids, obsessed with Star Wars. I feel like that's a nerd achievement. But yeah, all things Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. But this is up here is the Tolkien original trilogy.
Nice.
But obviously, the lion's share is devoted to Star Wars.
So you're a Star Wars versus Star Trek person, if you're picking between the two, for sure? Okay.
Yeah, my dad always watched Star Trek, so I did grow up watching Star Trek, but I never got into it as much as Star Wars.
Got it. Okay. Sometimes we get like a curveball in there, and people will say Babylon 5 was my favorite pick, but it's good to see.
That's another great show. Firefly. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot to pick from. Let's be honest here.
Oh, totally. Awesome. All right. Last question. If the NSA gave you a secure line to prank call anyone in the world, who are you calling and what is the prank?
Who came up with this one? This one's great.
I was just about to ask, man, how do you come up with this stuff? These are fantastic. I imagine you came up with these before ChatGPT was the thing too, so you can't even blame it on AI. So if I had if the NSA gave me a secure line, I would call Gordon Ramsay. and I would pretend to be one of his chefs that he reformed.
Yeah.
And I would say that I forgot how to boil water.
Oh, no.
That's what I would do. And I'd ask him to teach me how to boil water.
I don't think you can actually cook.
This is it, Trevor. This is a main thread of our podcast is complaining that all cooking shows don't have to be competitions. Why is it always a competition? It could just be a fun and relaxing thing where you learn a recipe. Why are we fighting all the time?
It's the weirdest thing to make a competition out of too. Like how is cooking food the substance of our survival? How have we turned that of all things into a competition? I love the cooking shows. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
the Great British Baking Show or whatever that thing's called. My wife loves it. I love it just as much. I watch it all the time. Yep. But I'm with you. I don't understand why we've made eating a competition.
Like I know Guy Fieri gets a lot of bad rap, and there's been some issues. But the early days of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dive, where he would just like go to a place, he'd eat a sandwich, and he'd be like, "This is a delicious sandwich. Tell me more about it." Like I could watch that. I'm okay with that. That's enough for me.
That's how we're supposed to do it, right? It doesn't need to be the best sandwich. It can be a good sandwich. That's fine.
They're all pretty good.
Sandwich.
They're all pretty good.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Okay, Jack, what do you think? Has Trevor got what it takes?
Yeah, for sure. But certainly by the time we got to question 5, where he was correctly taking Gordon Ramsay to task, I think.
Oh, that was a perfect answer.
So, Trevor, welcome to our fantasy cybersecurity squad. You can fulfill a lot of roles, but you've got the correct temperament to be a part of it. So thanks.
Fantastic. I am honored to be a member of the fantasy cyber football club. Thank you.
So, Trevor, if folks want to get in touch with you or with SpyCloud or learn more, how can they do that?
Well, we have a website. You go to SpyCloud.com. If you want to go check out our blogs, we also have SpyCloudLabs.com, which will take you directly to the labs version of SpyCloud. But I'd encourage you to just go to SpyCloud.com because we got a lot of fun stuff on the main site as well.
Very cool. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening. For the entire No Password Required team, I'm Jack Clabby, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for listening to the No Password Required podcast. Join us next time for more with your favorite cybersecurity personalities. In the meantime, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. You can find us on social media at No Password Pod. The show is produced by Cyber Florida, and a special thanks goes out to our friends at Carlton Fields and Reality Shift. For more information, visit our website at cyberflorida.org/pod.